A lot's already been said, so I won't repeat it. But I just want to take a moment to acknowledge the grief that I feel. I'm probably not the only one when I think about some of these statistics. And I think about where they lead us, 50% drop in sperm count. Average age of menses, kids, 10, 11 years old. When I think about the impact of these statistics of the decline in our biosphere and our ecosystems, biological diversity, and the number of people who are living chronically sick, and obesity and overweight, now 70% of the population in this country, on forecast to be 90% in the next generation. And when we see so many of us living chronically sick and so many of our kids suffering, food allergy rates amongst our children have quintupled in the last generation. The number of kids who are hospitalized for a food allergy. So, it's not just in our heads or in some overprotective mom's mind that our kid's allergic to peanuts. No, the kid's really allergic to peanuts. And there's a lot of other stuff like that now. And so when I face these facts, and when we look at these facts, I just want to acknowledge that we can point at the villains, and we can point at what we can do, and there's also a lot that is happening systemically that we can do a lot to reverse it, but you know what? Our environment is polluted, right? It's going to take time. Our gene pool is polluted. It's going to take time, and some of these genetically engineered crops will never be extinct from this earth, because this is perpetuity. This is the gene pool being contaminated. And so I'm saying this not to depress, but because I actually want us to, I think we can only genuinely respond effectively to what we face when we genuinely face it. When we genuinely absorb the reality of where we are, that can also, I believe, give us the power, give us the courage, give us the capacity to effectively respond. And the truth is, there's a lot of denial that sets in, because we don't want to face how much it hurts, because it's painful to face it. But I say that denial is actually the thief of action. It's actually the thief of courage. And so what I want to invite you, as you're hearing some of these facts, if you feel outraged, if you feel sad, if you feel concern, then I want to invite you to let that become a force that lives in you. Let that light a fire in you, because I believe that actually the responses we feel genuinely as real human beings to what we face are part of what will give us everything we need to do to discover what's possible. And that's, to me, the hope of the world.
Okay, I'd like to again ask a series of questions. Maybe you could comment on an individual one, or you could comment on how they're related. But I'd like to read you 8 questions, then you could pick one or just tell me if there's a relationship between them. So the first question is, are weeds becoming resistant to Roundup? What impact does that have on society if the weeds become resistant to Roundup? Please explain what that means. Question 2. You said if you introduce a GMO into the environment, the genes become a permanent feature of the gene pool. It gets passed on generation after generation. The only thing that lasts longer than a contaminated gene pool is extinction. Please explain that in greater detail. Question 3. Are GMO crops contaminating all the non-GM crops, including organic crops? Please explain this. 4. Seed diversity is disappearing, and 3 chemical companies own more than half. Our food security hinges on the struggle now underway over who controls the earth's seeds. Question 5. You said that 15 times more glyphosate is being used compared to before GMOs were introduced. Why is that happening, and what impact does that have on people? Number 6. Is Roundup or glyphosate in our food, even if we avoid genetically modified foods? Question 7. Is it true that Russia has banned the planting of genetically modified seeds? What countries allow or don't allow the planting of genetically modified seeds? And finally, question number 8. There's been a dramatic reduction in the number of fruits and vegetables. Why does this matter? Why do we need 5,000 variety of apples? Aren't we fine with just 10? So if you want to comment on an individual one, great. If there's some relation between these that you want to make an overall statement about, that's fine as well.
You're killing us, Steve. That's tough. That's a tough line. I'm going to take just a couple. try to explain weed resistance really quickly. So Roundup Ready, genetically engineered crops were introduced in the 90s. And most of the GMOs on the market right now are these weed-resistant crops. And the way they work is they engineer the plant to resist the chemical, mostly glyphosate. So glyphosate will kill everything green, except a plant that is genetically engineered to resist it will survive that. So they introduced these crops. They were incredibly effective at selling glyphosate and Roundup use has gone way up since then. The weeds, because nature finds a way around, have become resistant. Yes, I mean, that's well documented. And the solution to that, the insane solution, I'm just going to name the insane system of addiction, but the insane solution to that is to genetically engineer crops to resist other chemicals too, dicamba, 2,4-D, some of the older chemicals, and to triple stack them. So they're spraying all these chemicals and the plants continue to resist. And then to double down on that insanity even more with the new genetically engineered crops, because genetic engineering has really made leaps and bounds to now where you can gene edit or quickly change the DNA of crops. One of the things they're looking at is genetically engineering or gene editing weeds to become more susceptible to Roundup. So it's a system that is not going to stop until we challenge it and call it insane is what it is. And the other thing I wanted to answer quickly is there Roundup in food that's non-GMO? Yes, 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 and that's very important. And in fact, some of the highest levels of Roundup may be in wheat, and that's because they have a process in beans, and as well as other things that are not genetically engineered. Really, corn and soy and a few other crops are GMO right now. But glyphosate is sprayed on wheat and other crops in a process called desiccation, basically to make it easier for farmers to harvest. So this crop's alive and they're dying at different rates. They just want to kill it all at the same time, so it's easier to harvest. And right before it gets consumed, so the levels are quite high. That process should just be banned and outlawed like tomorrow. But if you're looking to eat organic food, and I think especially for kids, I think about this a lot as a mom. Kids eat so much wheat, the white food diet, but really looking for organic food for kids and wheats, pastas, I think is really important.
I've spent 25 years answering those questions, Stephen. So I'm going to give some resources. To get a list of all of the studies that have been done on glyphosate levels in food, you can go to responsibletechnology.org. Every time some organization publishes any of them, we put them all together in one report so that you can figure out that if you can't get organic food, which foods do you want to avoid, like the chickpeas and the mung beans and the lentils and the oats and the wheat, etc. So that's at responsibletechnology.org. You also mentioned that the only thing that lasts longer than the self-propagating genetic contamination is extinction. You were quoting me. And you can find out about our plan to protect the irreversible contamination of the gene pool at another website called Protect Nature Now. There's a 3-minute film which you're welcome to steal and share with as many people as you want. It says go to protectnaturenow.com at the end, but if your organization doesn't like that, we'll give you an unbranded version and you can send them to your website and we'll give you all the resources on that site for you, because we need to protect nature now and we're not in competition. We need to all work together. I also want to make a comment on an earlier comment that Ocean, you mentioned. You've been really the heart of our panel in a couple of ways, just bringing up the deep feeling that you're experiencing. And you talked about the high rates of cancer among the farm workers. And you said, and then you sort of quietly said, and that sort of depends on, relates to our food choices. And I was really moved by that because, we hear about the fact that the farm workers live to 49, and we say, this is terrible, someone should do something. Well, the choosing of organic food is something that you can do. So when I said earlier, to afford organic, combine 3 budgets, your food budget, your health budget, and your philanthropy budget. This is, in a way, what I was talking about, so that we can create healthy food systems for the farm workers and for the environment. And if we think of this, and these things are lively, we can carry this into our supermarkets. So when we see there's a price discrepancy between organic and non-organic, we can think in terms of those farm workers and not have to pay for them to deliver more pesticides and hurt their lives more as one of the excuses, and also living longer and healthier as another excuse. So I just wanted to comment on that because I thought that was beautiful.